Federalist 14, Part 2. To this accidental source of error may be added the artifice of some celebrated authors whose writings have had a great share in forming the modern standard of political opinions. Being subjects either of an absolute or limited monarchy, they have endeavored to heighten the advantages or palliate the evils of those forms by placing in comparison with them the vices and defects of the republican, and by citing as specimens of the latter the turbulent democracies of ancient Greece and modern Italy. Under the confusion of names, it has been an easy task to transfer to a republic observations applicable to a democracy only, and among others the observations that it can never be established but among a small number of people living within a small compass of territory. Remember, he's referring to Montesquieu in his book Spirit of Laws. And in Spirit of Laws, Montesquieu keeps on saying a republic will work only in a small area. Okay, I'll continue. Such a fallacy may have been less perceived as most of the popular governments of antiquity were of democratic species. And even in modern Europe, to which we owe the great principle of representation, no example is seen of a government wholly popular and founded, at the same time, wholly on that principle. If Europe has the merit of discovering this great mechanical power in government, by the simple agency of which the will of the largest political body may be concentred and its force directed to any object which the public good requires, America can claim the merit of making the discovery the basis of unmixed and expensive republics. It is only to be lamented that any of her citizens should wish to deprive her of the additional merit of displaying its full efficacy in the establishment of the comprehensive system now under her consideration. As the natural limit of a democracy is that distance from the central point which will just permit the most remote citizens to assemble as often as their public functions demand, and will include no greater number than can join in those functions, so the natural limit of a republic is that distance from the center which barely allow the representatives of the people to meet as often as may be necessary for the administration of public affairs. Can it be said that the limits of the United States exceeds this distance? That the limits of the United States exceed this distance? It will not be said by those who recollect that the Atlantic coast is the longest side of the Union, that during the term of the 13 years, the representatives of the states have been almost continually assembled, and that the members from the most distant states are not chargeable with greater intermissions of attendance than those from the states in the neighborhood of the Congress. He says, look, even though we are a big republic, look on the map, he mentions the Atlantic coast right here. Since Continental Congress under the first, right before the revolution started, met in Philadelphia. He says, in this new constitution, I'm sure the capital is going to be somewhere close to there, and the people who say the distance is so long that it's not going to be bearable, he says, look, we've had under Continental Congress, under Articles of Confederation, this past 13 years, since 1784, because that's the first time they met in the Continental Congress. From 1784 to 1787, he says this last 13 years, we have met there, the representatives from different states have gone there, and it doesn't show that, like representatives of Georgia being this far away, it doesn't show that they've been absent more than the people that are like from Philadelphia or Pennsylvania or Virginia. When he says intermissions, he means not been able to attend the Congress. So he says that is a wrong analogy. And then this paragraph, at first, one part of it is a little boring, but what he basically does is he tells you about the distance from here to here, from here to here, and from right here to here. So he says, this is our distance. We can figure this out. We can put the capital somewhere where our representatives can meet regularly. That we may, from a juster estimate with regard to this interesting subject, let us resort to the actual dimensions of the Union. The limits as fixed by the Treaty of Peace are on the East Atlantic and on the south the latitude of 31 degrees, on the west the Mississippi, and on the north an irregular line running in some instances beyond the 45th degree, in others falling as low as 42nd. So the east coast is Atlantic, right? The west coast is the Mississippi River. And the south coast is right here. And he says the north is going to be a little different because it goes up and down, okay? That's basically what he's referring to. The southern shore of Lake Erie lies below that latitude. Computing the distance between the 31st and 45th degree, it amounts to 973 common miles. Computing it from 31 to 42 degrees to 764 miles and a half. Taking the mean for the distance, the amount will be 868 miles and 3/4. The mean distance from the Atlantic to the Mississippi does not probably exceed 750 miles. On a comparison of this extent with that of several countries in Europe, the practicability of rendering our system commensurate to it appears to be demonstrable. It is not a great deal larger than Germany, where a diet representing the whole empire is continually assembled. Here, the diet doesn't mean the same thing we talk about these days. A diet used to be the Congress of Germany, where the representatives met. Or then Poland before the last dismemberment. Surrounding countries used to invade Poland and take pieces of it. So he says before its dismemberment, before they tore it up. Where another national diet was the depository of the supreme power. Passing by France and Spain, we find that in Great Britain, inferior as it may be in size, the representatives of the northern extremity of that island have as far to travel to the National Council as will be required of those of the most remote parts of the Union. So he's saying if we choose our capital around here, any distance from even Georgia to our capital is going to be almost like the distance of people going from northern part of England to London, which is the southern part. So he says this is an excuse. If people say the republic is too large, our representatives cannot meet, he says that's just an excuse.